I think the reason I couldn't get out of a lot of the situations I was in was because I was like, what is my purpose? I'm a fixer. My whole job is to fix this boy, this man, this person I'm with.
It's crazy because how heavy that was, that I felt it went away in 2 seconds.
The obligation.
The obligation of like trying to feel like I need to sort everything out. That was my problem.
Any one state that comes up, that's not who you are. See, when people remember things that are, and they feel anxiety about the memory, it's because they're 9 times out of 10, they're remembering it as if they're seeing through their own eyes. If you get them to say, if you just say, well, what happens if you step out of that memory and look at it from the outside in?
All right. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we have an old friend of mine, fellow skateboarder, he's been a part of the Vancouver skate scene for how 30 decades now.
Yeah.
Him and his brother, they've been there since I started my journey as a sponsored skater, helping me before I was sponsored. And I'll let him do all the talking about what's going on in his life now, but it's even more in depth than I thought it was. Everyone welcome my friend Gordon Faulkner.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
3 decades, that's crazy, because when I was a kid, you would never hear somebody say that, like, I've been skating with this person for 3 decades. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I moved here in 98, and how long ago after was it? It was like 99 or something, like that we started.
That was like
skating.
Richmond Skate Ranch days.
No, that was just after. He was at the Richmond. You were in Richmond skating vert there, weren't you?
Yeah, skating vert at the Richmond
crazy.
Skate Ranch, back on the very first time, the first location. So yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, Vert Boys.
That's right.
Him and his brother. Yeah, and then I started skating with him when I kind of got here before DECA, before all of it, before even getting free stuff at all. And we would skate together at Richmond Skate Park, the Richmond Park. That was after the skate ranch, and
it's cool how my brother George, who helps set up some of this, learned a lot of his videoing and editing skills from back in the day, filming you and editing Sponsor Me tape.
Yeah, his brother George filmed and edited my first Sponsor Me tape that I would send to sponsors out there, and I think he did like 3 or 4 of them. Yeah, and I think I said it in Nine Club when girls switched, they moved their warehouse. They went from was it East Torrance to kind of more towards the coast. They emptied their warehouse and they found VHS demo tapes.
Way.
That's crazy.
And it was the one that George filmed of me doing tricks at UBC. Yeah. With like a whole letter that I written, and like George helped me. I think George helped me write the letter. Even my old phone number was on it.
Crazy. You still have. Jess, do you know what Sponsor Me videos are?
It's like a demo tape.
I do not.
It's like a demo tape of, because before the internet, someone had how would they know where so you'd have to film tricks of yourself and then mail it, hoping to God that it would go there.
So like the whole goal of a skater is to get sponsored. To have the support of a company, and then they would move
Most
up.
people, yeah.
I mean, that's sort of the trajectory. It's like applying to medical school.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like your medical school application. It's your Sponsor Me video.
But how do you know where to send it?
Well, because in magazines at the back, there's like companies that with their addresses on it and stuff. You just Hail Mary it and be like, oh, I'm sending it there. Yeah. You don't know anybody, so it's 98% chance you're never gonna hear anything from anyone.
That's way before Instagram, like skateboarders were the ones compiling footage of themselves, making little montages and sending them around the world. It was like that.
Which I think is the best. Recently I applied to a tenure professorship position, and they wanted a personal statement essay, and I asked them if I could send a video.
Wow.
They said no.
Wow. They were like, no go.
Yeah,
no go.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's such a better way. Anyways, moving on. But that's what that is.
Like a mixtape.
Yeah, of your skills.
Got it.
A portfolio of your whatever.
It's your CV.
Yep.
Yeah, and usually you have to make like 10 of them, and George made like maybe 3 or 4, and then then I got to know some of the other guys that were through Ultimate and Kelly Jablonski and all these guys that had connections to the places down in the U.S. So that that helped when I was sending my video. They would give it to them, and then they would hand it to the company because they dealt with them through getting their boards up here and stuff like that.
Right.
And it kind of went like that. But yeah, it's been 20 years. And, you know, we haven't skated together in a long time, here and there a little bit, but you went on your own little journey too, didn't you? Like in terms of like, I didn't see you skating for a while.
Yeah, actually that could lead right into that little window of my life. I mean, I've struggled off and on with depressive thinking, anxious thinking, but there was a window of time between 2010, 2012, where I barely skateboarded at all. Mm. And strangely, that was the window of my life where I was suffering from anxiety and depression to the point where I booked myself into the welfare system. I had no money. I was extremely anxious, extremely depressed, and they put me into a anxiety and depression support group. In hindsight, part of that stress was because I wasn't doing the thing that had kept me healthy, happy, and sane most of my life. Skateboarding, physical activity. I mean, you would know more than me, but the research on how physical activity helps mental well-being, I was doing no physical exercise or activity. But in a weird way, it was good because it had me face my demons and really kind of look inside and like, well, what's going on? I actually think, even though physical health and exercise, yes, that's one of the best things we can do for well-being. And I'm back. I'm physical now. I run, I bike ride, skateboard a little bit, but I shouldn't have to feel that depressed, that anxious if I'm not doing that stuff. And so my journey was about letting go of issues, learning some mindfulness and self-hypnosis to change some old patterns that were creating depressive thinking, anxious thinking, and my life has just kind of, it feels like to me I turned a downward spiral and I just flipped it upside down. Because even though when I had the big aha, and I'll share that in a few moments, the big aha that kind of popped me out of that being stuck in depression, I still had depressive moods, I still faced anxiety like most humans do. But gradually, my life just got better and better and better and better. So that's my metaphor, turning the downward spiral upside down. And it was actually in that welfare office in North Vancouver that I had the light bulb moment.
Crazy.
Just changed.
I want to hear about that, but I have a question just to provide for me to get some content. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, maybe you want to introduce what you do now.
Okay.
So that we get a better context of what you're doing right now and what you've like.
So I work right now as a transformative coach. In 2014, in fact, I took a transformative coaching certification. Most of our faculty were psychologists, in fact, that were brought in and teach the 3 principles model of psychology, which is a personal and community-based psychology, teaching people, for lack of a better term, mindfulness skills. So it's less about techniques and cognitive conditioning and more about just teaching people that feelings come from thought. It's a simplistic message, but the way it's delivered is usually very organically and based on life experience. One of the key people was Dr. George Pransky, who switched over to that model of the 3 principles, helped develop it years ago, but he was a big influence watching him lecture in my coaching courses. So that was 2014, and I didn't really work. I had some clients, word of mouth here and there, and then the other fascination I have is hypnosis, hypnotherapy, but I'm not a registered therapist or a doctor, so I call myself a hypnotist, which works with thought patterns, unconscious thought patterns. And I've been doing that for years, off and on. Even with my coaching clients years ago, I would share little guided meditations and hypnotic processes. And I actually got more positive feedback from doing that than the mindfulness coaching. So now what I do is I combine both. I do some hypnosis, and then we do a bit of transformative coaching, mindfulness coaching. And so I don't treat or diagnose any medical conditions. What I do is work with people to help them reduce anxiety, overcome fears, resolve emotional issues, and overcome self-sabotage, build confidence, communication skills. Recently, I've been working with a few coaches, actually, and coaching them with some how to work better with language and influence. That's something I studied a little bit, too, from when I did a NLP course. So the way I frame it is I work with thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So no diagnosis or no mental illness, just mental well-being training. That's how I feel safe framing my work.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a ton of questions.
He's been like writing like a demon on that paper. Like,
Ton of questions. I love questions.
I mean, I'll just start, but you just chime in and tell me to stop talking.
Let me see if can you see if that's recording there? Is it?
Yeah, it's right.
Okay,
it's
good.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
the anxiety is real.
Yeah. Here we go.
Can you help us with that? Thank you.
Yes, I can. Definitely.
Cool. Are you charging it? Is this a session?
Yeah.
Pro bono for a session. Remember you saying that? That's it, yeah.
My goal is to get you hooked.
That's right.
I like it.
Okay. Well, starting off, a bunch of stuff you've said has sort of prompted questions for me, but just to understand your experience, because it sounds like you guys were friends and you're skating and you're in the skate scene. And if I'm understanding it correctly, a time came when you were less in the skate scene and you weren't seen as much. And that sounds like when you were also struggling with these depressive thoughts and feelings. Yep. So, but I guess, so two questions. One is was this just like a slow progression where you started to feel more and more down and less motivated to skate, or was there like a trigger or something that came about that sort of changed things dramatically for you? How did that come about?
It may have been a trigger. I was in a really dysfunctional relationship.
Okay.
That I felt really stuck in for a year and a half or so. And it was near the end of that relationship that I was the lowest, and then checked myself into the anxiety, depression support group. And what I understand about that now is anytime someone feels stuck in especially a relationship where they actually logically know they have freedom to leave, because it wasn't a healthy relationship, anytime they feel stuck, it's an old pattern. Like that's the metaphor that makes sense to me. An old pattern that we learn patterns from childhood, staying in things that are unhealthy. When I had all the freedom in the world to just leave that relationship, eventually I did, but it was feelings of responsibility of being there even though I was unhappy, feelings of responsibility of trying to take care of her emotionally and mentally. Feelings of fear of being on my own. Strangely, the first week of that relationship, I had an intuition that it was going to be bad for me. I did a visualization technique that I had learned. I was still a bit of a self-help junkie back then even. There was one exercise where you used to help you make decisions. You just visualize yourself walking down two different paths. One path represents one decision. The other path represents the other decision. And don't overanalyze it, just whatever comes to mind, the imagery, the feelings. And when I walked down the path of moving in with this person, I saw rain and dark clouds and a feeling of dread and sadness and just all this dark imagery. I wasn't making myself have that. It just instinctively came to me. And then I was like, hey, back to the beginning, the other fork in the road. Sunshine, lightness. This is metaphorical. So I've been learning the subconscious mind works in metaphor. A feeling of energy, a feeling of lightness. Maybe living on my own and not really getting too deep into that dysfunctional relationship. And then I went and told the person I was in a relationship what I did. And then, of course, she didn't like that and convinced me to move in. And right. I tried to push away that feeling of dread. I think our instincts always know, and just tried to, make it work. And that was the downward spiral. And so, yeah. So in a way, it was letting go of the should that freed me. But that aha moment that I'll get to in a moment that I had in the welfare office was something so different than what I'd been used to, because I'd talked to counselors and done self-help techniques and kind of therapeutic techniques that just weren't budging. It wasn't moving anything for me, but there was one insight I had in that welfare office that kind of lifted a lot of that weight and helped me kind of move on from that relationship and helped me get back on track with my life. So
it's interesting because why do we do that? Like, you see a fork, you see the right path, you see the dark path, and so often we go down the dark path.
Yeah, I can answer, but I'm gonna pre-frame it by saying when I give this answer, some people it doesn't land, but the reason that it affected me so much is because it landed. And the reason why it doesn't land for a lot of people is because it sounds oversimplistic, and it's not full of theory and things we need to do and reasons why. And I was sitting in the welfare office after our anxiety depression support group. I was on the computer. They were wanting us to look for work or something, but I was Google searching personal development websites, and I saw a quote from Dr. George Pransky, or someone quoting him, and it was something like, you're not in the feeling of your life, you're in the feeling of your thinking. And I just read that and I just kind of went, all this baggage, all this weight, all this heaviness, even when we were doing sitting at the table and the counselor, the therapist was talking us through our exercises, I still had this weight because what we were trying to work with was the idea of our past or how our life looks now, trying to feel better about it. And it was just like, when I read that quote, I was like, oh, that's thought that I'm feeling. It's not my life. That's thought. Because other people have been in situations like that and somehow found a way. It's because they had different thinking. So it was then I was like, I gotta learn from George Pransky. And that led me to taking this transformative coaching course in which George was one of the faculty members. And that was where I really kind of, for a while, I stepped back from all the techniques and the working on myself and the overthinking things and just became a lot more mindful. And then now what I'm doing is I'm bringing this mindfulness into the sessions that I do with people with the techniques, because I've also found the valuable in doing the guided meditations or hypnosis and doing some of the mindfulness exercises as well. It's valuable. Both I found are valuable.
I just had a moment, and it was my aha moment with you, and you're like the shoulds that we do in life.
Yeah.
That's so much of like, I think what has led me through anxiety and depression is like what I should be doing, and like following that and that pathway. So I think that's important to like touch on and address.
Well, Dr. Gabor Mate wrote a book, When the Body Says No. I read it. I haven't read the whole thing, but what I got for me is anytime I was going through a lot of heavy depression was if I stepped back and just looked at my life, it was almost always, not all the time, but almost always when I wasn't saying no to something that I should have been saying no to. And I've literally had moments where I've just felt safe to say no, and I just had the freedom. I'm like, oh, I got to say no to that person. It could be something simple like a request or something to do with this or that. But as soon as I said no and set a boundary, the depression lifts. Like, it's like, oh, and that's what I understood about that book is sometimes the body with chronic pain or even addictions and depression is an attempt to give you an excuse to back out of shit that you don't really want to be doing. Like, I saw that so big in my life. Like, it was amazing. Like, oh, I'm spending time with this person. I don't even feel good after I spent time with them. No wonder I'm suffering.
Yeah, it's like duty, obligation. Yeah, there's, I've been there.
And then the piece that helped with the mindfulness piece was really getting, and I do this with clients too, but really getting people to really actually get that that's made up. The should is not an external reality unless you're being held by gunpoint and made. But I've talked to so many people that feel stuck, say in a relationship or this or that, And the whole goal of a session, say when they work with me, is getting them to see that, well, that's coming from here. It's not coming from outside.
Yeah.
And then we can do some techniques to help them break down how that's happening. For some people, it's more visual. Some people, it's auditory. Some people, it's internal dialogue. And I could go more into that when I talk about submodalities in a bit and explain what that is.
Do you think there's some sort of like idea of the willingness to be? Because I remember we just did a podcast with Ben, and Ben DeGrow, and he was talking about the willingness to accept what it is. Because you could have probably seen that your aha moment happened at a specific time, but you could have maybe seen that exact same message another time in your journey and been like, it didn't have the same impact. So it was like channeling the willingness to accept what that is and focus then is like, how's that?
I was open for it.
Yeah.
I believe in that. Sometimes, like even when I do a hypnosis session, the reason why I like the hypnosis modality, I'll go a bit more into that in a while, but is because it really helps people relax and their guard goes down, and you bypass critical thinking. That's a big phrase a lot of hypnotherapists and hypnotists use. What you're doing is you're bypassing the critical thinking that says, I'm not ready, I'm scared, I can't do this. And you're talking directly to the unconscious process. See, if I talk to your conscious process, that's all the words and the reasoning and all of that. The unconscious process is, how big is the image in your mind of that fear? Well, what happens if you shrink it down? That's unconscious. Most people aren't aware of, like most phobics, when they think of a spider, the image is larger than life. If you really have them just imagine shrinking it down, 90% of the feeling will just, that's weird. And sometimes it's the sounds, you get them to turn it down. That's all unconscious. Most people are just conscious of the internal dialogue, all the reasons why they have this. Oh my God, this is so terrible. So I was, for some reason, in that welfare office, ready to be impacted by that quote. My unconscious was just like, you need to absorb this and it needs to change your life. Like, I was a bit desperate too.
Well, sometimes I get, Sometimes.
It was like that, the desperate moment where you're just like, fuck.
Yeah, like I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. Nature, God, whatever. Give me something different. So
Yeah, that's exactly what Ben was talking about too.
That's right.
Like, so it's like
Sweet. I like that you brought that up.
And so during this period in your life, you're leaving skateboarding behind.
I came out once in a while.
Yeah.
And I felt weird around my friends. I remember I went to Kensington Park once, and I just felt so out of place. And it made me so sad because that was my
those are your homies.
Skateboarding.
Yeah,
Those are my homies. I felt physically weak, like, I wasn't doing it. Partly the reason why I was so ashamed of my depression, super ashamed.
What do you mean?
I didn't want people to know about it. I didn't want people to know I was struggling that bad. But now I don't care. I could talk about it to anyone. It doesn't matter. But I was ashamed. Maybe I thought I would be judged or something.
And you felt like like people would know, you couldn't hide it. Like if I go, they'll know I'm depressed. Like how did that work?
Because I'm quite a congruent guy. Like if someone asks me how you're doing, I felt like I couldn't hide that. It would just come out. So that's another reason why I stayed away from skateboarding for a while. I didn't want people to know that I was struggling. So
one of the cognitive distortions is like everybody will know. Everybody knows what I'm.
Yeah. The reason now I feel so comfortable about it is because I've integrated the tools I've learned. There was a time even when certain people I would talk about it, it felt like it would get worse. Even when I shared it with family, I would feel worse after. So I really learned that that's not my mission to try and get friends or family to fix me. My mission was to get better, do my best to know which friends I could talk to and connect with, and then I still have that filter today. I tend to open up around people I feel comfortable around.
It's interesting because I feel like most people struggle with, at some point in their life, they're going to struggle with depression and anxiety. Yeah. So it's just part of being a human being. But the thought is that nobody else does.
That was the thought.
Right. And if I tell people, they're going to think this, this, and this, and this about me.
Yeah.
And there's like shame. And
what helped was when I was doing my transformative coaching course, some of these psychologists that taught the three principles, psychology, a lot of them just talked about their struggle with feeling down in the dumps or just having a bad week. And it just made me feel like, oh, if they can go through that, then maybe I'm not so afraid. So my pet peeve in my life, I've talked to certain counselors, certain friends at times where if I would share an anxiety or depression, they would get more scared about it than I was. And then I would see their fear, and then I would get even more fear. And I think that's what people do when people put a lot of weight. Oh, there's something wrong with you. Oh my God, you got a tip. Or these psychologists were saying, that's part of being human. It took away the fear piece. Mm-hmm. Without the fear, the depression can be beautiful sometimes. I can write about it. But it's not overpowering. Right. The fear is what makes it a problem.
And I think that's what makes it so difficult to deal with. I think it's really important for people listening, because, especially young people, because again, there's like so much shame associated with it. And the thought is like, nobody else is feeling this. I remember when I was in residency, which is the training after medical school, I had this mentor, super confident, outgoing guy who was like very social, gave these huge presentations, was building a program, et cetera, et cetera. And then one day he just sort of opened up to me. He's like, he described how he had struggled with so much anxiety and how he feels so anxious before he goes on stage, and he's tried medication, et cetera. I would have never known, right? So I feel like some people are just so well defended that that you would never know. And then the thought is then that like everybody else is functioning so well except for me. Yeah. Whereas I think that the rule, not the exception, is that most people are going to struggle with some element of mood, anxiety and depression at some point. Yeah. It'd be unusual if you don't, I feel.
Especially now with social media and all that shit.
I feel like we talked about that
before.
We
did. We did. Like raging anxiety.
I noticed about a year ago I haven't scrolled. Occasionally I'll go to pages that I like, Chris's, a couple other people, just check what they're up to, but I haven't scrolled in over a year.
Interesting.
And I do scroll YouTube a bit and watch some channels, but no Facebook scrolling, no Instagram scrolling, and it's definitely improved my mental clarity. I'll reach out specifically if I want to chat with someone. I'll just send them an audio message or...
Yeah, he sends audio messages, not even text messages.
We are twins. This is me. This is what I do. I will, like, if I can't call you, I'll just send you like 2-minute audio clips.
Yes.
Yeah, we're cool. We're gonna vibe. There was a thing you said earlier about going to the skate community and feeling out of place and just not wanting to talk about it in shame. And I think that's really important to touch on. I was in a very similar situation, disconnected from my whole reality, and went into a very big depressive state that no one knew about because I didn't want anyone to know about. And I was not even aware of it until I had finally broke away from that. But I was like, wow, I have not hung out with my friends.
Wow.
I have not talked to my family. I had just isolated myself away because of a horrible relationship. In the same way, and just totally lost my own identity, that all the things that brought me joy, I had cut myself off from all those things. And I see that now in so many kids about just going inside of themselves. And I'm wondering, when you're at that stage in life and it's like this moment, that aha moment, so many of us don't get there for so long. It took me like 6 years to get to that point.
Well, I'm curious, what was your aha moment?
Oh, it was crazy. It was a build-up. Everyone always asks that, like, what's the straw that broke the camel's back? And I cannot tell you to this day what it was. It was not something for me. It was what was happening around me. And it was, it's super personal. And I probably won't get into it on this. And I fear that my ex-husband is listening to a podcast right now. But it took a lot to just get to that point, and going through counseling over and over again, like trying to re-engage and then walking away and be like, hey, it's not working, and walking away and going back to it. And I don't think lots of us have this like click state that happens. And I worry I don't want to frame it in such a way, because I think lots of people aren't going to have that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're afraid that lots of people aren't going to have that.
Yeah, I know I didn't have like this big aha moment. It was like, holy crap, if I keep on this forever, I'm never going to get out. I'm going to be a shell of a person. And it took years and years of counseling and therapy and re-engagement to even get to where we are today.
Wow.
And I suffer from anxiety. Like, Puya's out here talking about people that look like they got it all together before they go, in public speak and have these moments. That's me. Like, I have anxiety every day that I wake up, and it can be like super debilitating.
You would never know. 'Cause she's so confident. You would never know. Yeah.
People used to say about me, like, "Oh, you're the calm, comforting guy," and they would be surprised that I had anxiety.
Yeah, you have a baby-making voice. Like, what's his Barry White, dude? Your text, when you do your
Voice text.
Yeah, your voice text. You're just like,
It's soothing.
Can I share a little tip that helped me with my understanding of helped me reduce anxiety?
Absolutely.
And again, not from a perspective of a licensed therapist or a doctor. It's more of a transformative coach and hypnotist, but a really good therapist actually and a hypnotist. He reframes and helps patients see that, turns it from a noun into a verb, anxietizing, because anxiety isn't a thing. You can't point to it. But anxietizing, how are you doing that? And for me, it was like, I'm running, I'm catastrophizing in my mind, and I'm believing all of those thoughts. I'm maybe not taking good care of my body. I'm drinking too much caffeine, or I'm not getting exercise. So how are you doing that? So that's a question I ask more for people if I'm helping them overcome fear. It's like, how do you do that? Most people are unconscious about the process that's actually creating. So that really helped me. There is a benefit of saying, I've also rethought this a few times. Sometimes I'm an overthinker. But there is a benefit of turning it back into a noun if you want to kind of get some distance. Oh, that's just anxiety. That'll come and go. It's a part of being human. We all have anxiety from time to time. But if you're stuck in it, for me, it's like, how am I anxietizing right now? I'm believing my thoughts. I'm not drinking enough water. I'm not. So it puts the power back in you instead of something just happening. Like, you should see when I did a session a month ago with someone with public speaking phobia for 30 years. She had no idea how she was doing it in her mind, how her unconscious mind was generating that fear. As soon as we identified that, not for the purpose of re-feeling it and talking through why, and, your mother did this, that might be part of it, but just, how is it happening kind of structurally? For her it was a big mental image. She was... See, when people remember things that are, and they feel anxiety about the memory, it's because 9 times out of 10, they're remembering it as if they're seeing through their own eyes. If you just say, well, what happens if you step out of that memory and look at it from the outside in?
That's right.
It reduces.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any sounds there? Oh, yeah, it's my mom's yelling at me in that anxious voice. What happens if you just imagine turning that down? And what you're doing, I'm understanding the more I study this, is you're helping the brain reprocess how its relationship with memory. So just doing that a few times, and there's a few extra processes you can do in a hypnosis session that actually kind of anchors it in so that they can't get the old feeling back. And that's pretty trippy to watch when people have been used to that feeling for so many years. And that's all subconscious stuff that we're mostly not aware of.
That's pretty powerful, because you're in some ways re-experiencing that experience, but with somebody else guiding you through it. So now the experience is different.
And stepping away, like...
That's right.
A lot of people that do the work that I do kind of poke fun of the old school Freudian therapy of talking over and over. How does that make you feel? Mm-hmm. That will person re-enters that memory. If they're seeing it through their own eyes in the memory, of course the subconscious mind thinks it's happening again. Of course it's going to create all the stress chemicals in the body. And a rule that I heard, someone that does this kind of work, he was quoting neuroscience. I don't even think he was a neuroscientist, but he was saying the 90-second rule. If you have someone revisit a negative traumatic feeling for more than 90 seconds, you're reinforcing it. And so that's why I like the work that I do. They might stay in it for a few moments, but for the purpose of repatterning how the brain understands that memory and getting some distance from it. That's not to say that talk therapy doesn't work. If there's a good counselor, a therapist, and a good psychotherapist, they're able to help people have some emotional insights, etc. But more and more and more and more, I keep seeing people come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I've been talking with this issue with my therapist for years. It's like, oh, are they asking you, how does that make you feel? Yep.
So angry.
And then I come in and say, well, how is that thinking structured? And that is a totally different question. I never thought about that.
Oh, yeah. I had to quit my counselor that was saying, how does that make you feel? I'm like, I need homework. I need help. I don't need to talk about my feelings anymore.
Forward.
Let's go. Yeah.
Moving forward.
And I think we talked about that briefly. And I think that's important to kind of get through, because if there so many people, especially in my line of work, have been like, well, I went to this counselor and that was exactly what they said. This is like not a new issue. Your pet peeve is many of patients.
Your patients.
Yeah, they say this often, and that's the reason why they won't go to a counselor again.
Because I'll add a piece here. If the counselor has got, and this is based on my experience with counselors, so I'm not a counselor, but if a counselor has good rapport and is insightful and good at leading, then they could ask that question, of course. It might bring stuff up, but then they're good at moving you into a new experience. That's the piece that I think I found most important about why I got into the work that I'm doing, is help. Yeah, I want to go to someone and come out of that session feeling different.
Yeah.
Like feeling different so I can have some hope.
Can we define a couple of terms? We've mentioned mindfulness and we've mentioned hypnosis. I think it might be important to sort of just big picture define them. Like most people think of like hypnosis and they think of like, okay, act like a chicken, and somebody's like acting like,
like a magic act or something.
That's right. So.
Okay, I'll define hypnosis. So one of my favorite quotes is by Dr. Richard Nongard. He's a family therapist and hypnotherapist or hypnotist. I forgot what he labels himself as. But Dr. Richard Nongard, in his book, The 7 Most Effective Methods of Self-Hypnosis, he writes, in fact, we are in some kind of trance 24 hours a day, perhaps our sleeping trance, our working trance, our eating trance, our internet or television surfing trance. We have anxiety trances, happiness trances. The reason I love this quote so much is because it shows you that the hypnotic state is just a natural part of everyday life. And that's why most people, if you can get absorbed into a good book or a movie, can go into level 1 hypnosis. And a lot of good work can be done there. Some people go...
So what's a trance when you're in a trance?
A trance, the way I define it, there's lots of different definitions, is just being absorbed into an experience.
Okay.
And for the purpose of transformational work is being absorbed into an experience of the imagination where we can help move things. And a key point is most trance states, as well as problem states, can be an overactivization of one side of the brain. In a hypnotic trance, we aim to get people more into the right hemisphere. So if you're watching a good movie and you're fully absorbed, you're in your right hemisphere, according to how I understand it, because it's full of visual imagery, right hemisphere, sounds, right hemisphere, feelings, right hemisphere. You're absorbed. Your internal dialogue is turned all the way down. That's left brain. And you're absorbed. So what we do is we try and relax people. There's really cool relaxation techniques where you can actually, through a process of getting someone to imagine drawing numbers, which is left brain, drawing numbers in a color. So that's left brain, color is the right brain. Draw that number 10, rub it out, and imagine stepping down a staircase down to stair number 9, relaxing more and more as you go. You take a person down, and for most people, most of the time, they relax really deeply because you're preoccupying the left brain with the task. and you're getting them into the right brain, the color and the visualization of rubbing it down. So you're bypassing their critical factor, meaning the part of the brain that's like, oh, what's hypnosis? This isn't going to work. Da, 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 da. You're absorbing them in the process, and the process that I like to do is once they're deep in a comfortable state, you can tell by the look on their face they're in a level 1 or 2 or even 3 trance. And then you can do things like you can talk directly to their unconscious. What recently I've been doing is called a 6-step reframe, sometimes identified. It's connected to a thing called parts therapy as well. But I'll thank that part of their unconscious mind that's responsible for creating this issue that we've identified. It could be anxiety or stress or whatever, or a fear, and really thank it. Thank you for doing all the good. And you see the person just kind of relaxing. And then you talk to you frame it as the creative problem-solving part of the unconscious and ask that part, would you be willing to generate a healthy, new way to achieve all the benefits of that issue, but without the issue? And you in the next phraseology, I love the linguistics of this, and I don't want you to consciously know what this new way is now going to be. I just want you to get a sense. And what you're doing by telling them that it doesn't matter that they consciously know is you're getting them out of the left brain. They don't need to figure out. And for me, the way I experience it is more of a daydream process where people will feel shifts, and it's like a subtle daydreaming with imagery and feelings. And you'll see them their eyes move around as if they're having a little daydream. And a 20-minute process, people usually, you gradually bring them out and they open their eyes and they're like, whoa. Most people, most of the time, they're like, whoa, something's different. So what you're doing is you're taking away the over-analysis and letting I like to call it the daydream-like state to do the work.
Got it.
And it's the unconscious, the way I'm learning, is if you give it clear and specific directions, it will do something.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. You know, like people,
where did all this stuff come from then?
The history of hypnosis, I know a little bit, and that's
because that almost makes it look like a joke.
Yeah, that's part of it, and that's more of just there is a hypnotic process, self-hypnosis, or guiding someone through, where you get them to focus on a point at the end of on a wall or something.
Your left eye.
Yeah. Focus on a point, and that's just what that's doing, is helping them focus and start to narrow their attention down into one spot. And then what you're going to do is you're going to help them guide that focus into the induction, and then the whatever transformative process you want to use while they're in hypnosis. So it's just one definition of hypnosis is a narrowing of the focus.
Okay, no, I'm getting it, because the way people just assume we might know this stuff because we work in the field or like I went to med school, but we don't learn a lot of this stuff. So
I didn't learn any of it, not a lot of it. I didn't learn any of what you're talking about. Yeah, well, my mind is being blown.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm loving it.
It's pretty cool. Okay, so the way I understand it is,
take a picture.
Here we go. It's so much fun to do. I think we'll need a session afterwards.
Okay.
Pro bono one, please.
Okay. So we naturally will. It's a natural process that we put ourselves into a trance. You know, right? Like, because watching a movie,
go in and out.
We're constantly going in and out, like being in the zone or watching a movie or reading a book, whatever it might be. However, it seems like with hypnosis, you guide the person into a particular trance, and while they're there, then you can sort of work with them while maintaining that trance state.
Basically, it's using what's already happening in the world intentionally. And I'll give you one more metaphor. This landed really deeply for me years ago. I learned this, or someone gave this metaphor. Hypnotic trance is how children learn so quickly. Think of that. A child doesn't have internal dialogue.
That's right.
They're like eyes wide open, like a sponge. And if you think of it this way, even the way I think of when people have issues like negative, low self-esteem, it could have been the child was in that state and they were yelled at. Another thing that happens when a parent yells at a child is a spike in the amygdala also shuts down the critical factor, and whatever is being said registers deeply. I don't know, maybe it's the mirror neurons. I'm not a neuroscientist, but so all problem states, this really helped me actually, seeing that all problem states, if someone is suffering from a low self-esteem, a fear, a phobia, or this or that, happened as a form of just negative hypnosis. It's a hypnotic trance.
And that's how med school is taught often. It's like, I don't know if you've seen it, like they drill the medical students in front of all your, right? And then if you don't know the answer, they'll even go in more detail just to kind of like,
And then the other metaphor I sometimes bring into the work is in some ways, it's also like what we're doing, especially with letting go of issues or resolving emotional blocks, it's unhypnosis. We're delinking from that thought that used to be, in essence, a hypnotic command to that person. You wouldn't believe how many times I talk to people about, say, a low self-esteem issue or an emotional block where it's, not always, but often, sometimes it can be accumulative, but sometimes it's literally one memory, something they were told, something they saw, what they heard, and how they felt from something from their parent or an authority figure. And that created the trance state of low self-esteem. There was a number of issues in my life that I let go of that I kind of backtracked to, whoa, I was told that and I believed it and I felt it. That's, it's just a thought.
I feel like I'm in therapy right now.
That's right. No, that's deep, like holy.
Thanks. Yeah, that was my intention. Come here and hypnotize. Mesmerized.
I am. I'm like, and I have like visceral responses to things. So like my hair was standing up at one point because I'm listening to you talk, and it's like authority figure, parents. It's social circles too.
Well, social circles.
Well, because I'm just thinking of what you're saying. Like I was 15, and I think lots of like young girls can resonate with this. You get involved in a relationship, you meet an awesome guy, and that negative self-talk, if they're not the right person, over and over for years. It totally changes how you see yourself. And I'm thinking about, a parent saying this. And for me, it was, and for lots of the group of women that I hang out with, it's, wow, there were a lot of men in our lives who really berated us and made us feel like shit. And that still resonates. And unlearning that.
And for me, the reason why I like to do this work is it's about, again, not going into the story or why or this or that. It's about retraining someone how to, the relationship, not even so much with out there, but in here of like, oh, that's thought. Okay. And then the hypnosis works really well for helping people shift that. And then some of the mindfulness stuff. What helped me around certain people, I was really anxious. I used to actually have people in my friend circle, and sometimes family too, but where I would feel so anxious around that my gut would be wrenching with pain. Oh my God, it was horrible. But this mindfulness piece, that insight I had years ago at the welfare office about this brain is creating, oh, that's all it is? It's not from out there? Oh yeah, it's thought. And then what I did for myself is like, when I was around people, whatever state they were in, I was like, oh, that's thought too. They're in a thought created reality. So I have two mantras. I learned this from a hypnotherapist I really like. He's like, just say this brain is having a thought. There's no, everything beyond that is theory and story and this means that and because, but what's really happening. And then the other one I do is that brain is having a thought. And it doesn't always work, but I came back into my friend circles and started, why am I feeling more comfortable around them? Because I'm not I was more resilient around them. I wasn't absorbing so much of their anxiety or tension because I could just see that, they're just going through their shit. That's it. So.
You talk about this. Do you know what I'm thinking right now?
Yeah.
Do you actually know what I'm thinking? Can you say it?
No, you go.
No, you say it.
Well, I mean...
You say this all the time, and I'm just like resonating. He's saying what you're saying in a...
Well, I mean, you said it much more eloquently, but like what I often talk about is when I'm interacting with somebody and I'm feeling a particular way, I'm often feeling what they're feeling. And they're sort of externalizing it onto me in however way they are, and I'm feeling. Like, the example that I give is like, let's just say I'm interacting with somebody I haven't seen in a long time, and I see them and they show up late and they're like, sorry, I was busy and I was coming, and the mayor stopped me because he needed to talk to me, and then trying to find a place to park my Porsche, and you can't just park a Porsche anywhere, and then these stupid Rolexes are always next thing you know I'm like
is he talking about himself?
next thing you know you're feeling like super anxious and insecure. But really, like, why is that person flexing? It's because they're probably feeling anxious and insecure, and they're externalizing all of that onto you, and now you're feeling what their internal sort of anxious state was. Right. So that kind of externalization is, it's really important in our line of work, because when we interact with patients, and it's really important for me to be like keenly aware of what I'm feeling, because it often informs me of what the patient might be feeling.
I would think that's intuition and empathy. And I've had that throughout my life. In a way, I felt like I absorbed anxiety patterns from family and friends. So I've been playing with this idea of, can we be empathetic, but also stay resilient within ourselves? I don't think even though I'm talking about all this stuff, I don't think we're always supposed to never feel, like, always be confident, resilient, and We're supposed to feel other people's stuff. Yeah. But the thing that I've learned to do is I can reset and get back to center quicker than ever before. Usually I'm not anxious, or I don't get caught in anxious or depressive thinking for more than 5 minutes. It used to be 2 weeks. I used to walk the bridges and, maybe I should jump, like, that bad. That was during that moment over 10 years ago. But it would take me weeks to get over something someone said, or so that now it's 5 minutes because of all this stuff that I'm sharing with you today. So now I still let myself feel other people's stuff, but it's not a problem because I know how to.
You have the tools to deal with it.
Tools to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I see it differently. I don't, and it's another thing is identity. I used to have the role of the people pleaser, and I'm supposed to make the family system feel better. That's another thing. It's more of a metaphorical work.
That's you. That's her. Yeah, she's always trying to fix things. Yeah.
Metaphorical work, but I did a visualization exercise where I literally imagined stepping out of that old role I used to play and into a role that was more conducive to my health and well-being.
It's inevitable that we're going to feel what other people are feeling, right? And if you don't have the tools to deal with it, it's like what I always tell my kids is like, okay, if you're spending time with somebody, like, think about trying to be aware of how you feel after you spend time with them. And if it's always negative and you're always sort of frustrated and angry and upset, maybe that's not a positive person for you.
Simple, that's common sense. Yeah, I love it. But a lot of people don't even think about, they just go along with life. They haven't They haven't actually mapped out or took a good look at who they are spending time with. One of the best decisions I ever made was about 3 or 4 years ago. I wrote it in my journal. My intention, it was very simple: meet, befriend, and share my time with people I love being with and who love being with me. That's the filter. If it doesn't fit in there, I can have acquaintances, I can interact when I need to, but that helped me actually say no to certain relationships, say no to certain friends, say no to requests that I didn't feel that weren't authentic for me. Just that simple definition of
say it again, definitely.
Yeah. I'll give some little affirmation cards.
Yeah, literally.
So, meet, because I love meeting new people. Meet, befriend, and share my time with people I love being with and who love being with me. It's just simple. I know what that means. There's more qualities I could describe, but for me, my subconscious knows what that means. It means people who love to talk, people who are curious, people who know how to listen, people who genuinely care. Basically, it's that. That made so much difference in my life. Just that intention.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been mentioning, so we defined hypnosis actually very nicely. It was very informative for me. You've mentioned mindfulness a number of times.
Yeah. So mindfulness, the way it's normally taught, I actually don't know about how people describe. I know a little bit about that. The reason why I call the modality or the method. It's not a modality really, but the 3 principles teachings. It used to be called health realization back in the, I think, 70s when it was developed. I like that name better, health realization. And the reason why I call it mindfulness is because it's the simplest way for people to kind of understand what it is. And it's basically based on that understanding that we're not feeling reality, we're feeling or thinking about reality. And so the reason I know that's true is because I can be in an argument. I don't argue these days, actually. That's another thing I gave up. But years ago, I started learning this. And I'd be in a stressful situation with someone. But then I just take a break, let my mind settle, have a nap, do a meditation. And then I'm feeling better. Come back into that same situation. The exact same thing. The person could be doing or saying the exact same thing, and it's cute.
Right.
So that means it's not that. It's how I'm. Yeah. So in that, when I studied the 3 principles, health realization, some people call it the psychological illusion model. I think Jorgen Rasmussen out of Norway, he calls what he teaches psychological illusion model. But it's basically there's no techniques to it, and there's no cognitive conditioning according to how the original psychologists started sharing this. But for some reason, I just really love adding the hypnosis piece because I found it does a lot of the heavy lifting as far as getting people to relax quickly, deeply, and move some issues. And then after the session, we might talk a little bit about this mindfulness stuff. Like one of the questions I like to ask that's helped me as well is, where in your life have you not yet realized that it's thought that you're feeling? It's a trick question because even if you haven't yet realized it's thought that you're feeling, you're going to process that question and be like, oh.
I have a question for Chris. It's just interesting for me because although this has been very eye-opening for me, like a lot of the themes are somewhat familiar just from my training, probably for you as well. But what is it like for you hearing all of this stuff?
I'm curious too. I'm glad. I feel like I've been going on and on and on.
No, I've just me personally. You've talked on a couple things of that, there's like the people pleasing thing. There's like all these things that I've been feeling that I begin to notice with myself as well. So like a lot of the stuff is hitting on all the nodes that I'm have been experiencing over the past like couple of years. So it seems to be running across the board with either educators or not, like people going to school, getting their lectures, professors drilling down their throat, causing this stuff. And because I've never had that. I mean, I've had teachers that have sucked, but not like I'm going through skate stuff, So it wasn't. It was a totally different scenario, but I still encountered the same thing. I think it was me. A lot of it was because I was traveling a lot, skating. Because I went through a couple of things. I went through I was kind of pretty depressed. I mean, it wasn't because of a bad relationship. It was actually because the relationship was pretty good, but I started realizing stuff in myself that wasn't that I didn't even know who the hell I was. Kind of, I had put on this because my skating defined basically who I was for my whole life, and I would use. I lived a pretty, not normal lifestyle. I'd be able to be not going to work every day, but I'd be skating, and if 2 weeks would come by, I'd be like, flight or fight kind of mentality. And I would always just be like, oh, this is weird. I'm going. So I'd leave.
The skating, or
no? I'd leave. I'd go travel and skate in Europe, or go
instead of dealing with issues.
And dealing with issues. And I did that for 20 years. And so when the time came to where I didn't necessarily feel like I wanted to go anywhere, I started having to be like, oh my God, what the hell what is all this shit? You know what I mean? I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know, and then it just so happened that it happened right at the same time as this relationship that I started getting into, where she also started touching on all these things in me that were like, oh my God, there's another thing. Like, oh my God, there's another thing. You know, not like crazy stuff, but just stuff that I've never done. So I was like crazy. I went like,
Whoa. What year was that?
like 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
And then I was thinking about the aha moment I had.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm curious.
You're curious.
It's like me too.
This it was this year in January. That's I don't know. I started reaching out to you just to talk about some stuff, you know. And it was after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad relationship. It was all like, it was perfect. She was just doing what goes on. She's a perfect person. No weird negative, no, like, nothing like that. And it was just all internalized that I had no idea how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, insecurities, unrealistic expectations of what I'm supposed to be, or like in a relationship or in the world. Like, where the hell do I fit in? Because I've kind of put myself as an outsider in my home of Vancouver. Like, I come back, but nobody knows I'm here. So I'm always by myself anyway, because they just live their lives without me because I'm always gone. And then like that in LA too, because I'm always gone. So I had no real, like,
kind of like a nomad.
Yeah, basically. So I never had there was nothing keeping me anywhere. So I could always be like, oh, this feels weird because no one's like doing it. I'm going to go. And
you could always leave.
Yeah. And I'm not blaming skating at all, because it got me to where I'm at, and I would never change anything about what I did. Mm-hmm. It's just that I wish sometimes that I had more mental awareness of and dealing with myself through that whole time, instead of, and I don't even think I was aware that I was doing it until it was later that I started feeling like, oh my God, I don't know.
I need a minute. I'm going to need a minute.
I don't know who I am. You know, like I am this person, the skate person, and I'm supposed to be, you know, I'm at this level of skating. So people look at me and like, they're like, oh, he's the skate guy. He's supposed to be this guy. He's supposed to be, that's what I put on myself anyway. I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but that's what I was imagining they would be thinking. And that's where I don't want to show that I'm depressed. I can't. Mm-hmm. I'm not. Like, I cannot do that, because that would like ruin this like
image.
Yeah, like this like I don't even know what. Yeah, the image that I was portraying on my skate side of it. And then the relationship I was in just started hitting all these nodes again, being like, yo, okay, and then in terms of like what I want for my life, like I had no idea. Skating, that was it. That was all. That was as far as I went, and whatever came from skating would be cool. And then, like, real life stuff came, and I was like, "Oh my God, kids! What? Oh my God, marriage! Like, oh my God, what? Like, I can't even like have a dog most of the time. You know, what the hell?
The feeling of like I can barely take care of myself.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm
so
gonna be a part of this.
Yeah. So I was like, I was like, oh my God, and I left. I left the relationship, and it was like a whole year of me just being like miserable. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't. Like, I skate.
You were telling me that.
Yeah, I was skating, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like, I was desperately searching for a purpose. Because skating, I was like, I wasn't sponsored anymore. I mean, I was independent and all these things that are my homies, you know. So I was getting stuff still, but I wasn't like getting paid to skate anymore. So the thing that was driving me for years isn't there anymore. And I've always wondered about this segment of the pro's career. Like, I have a lot of my homies were like, oh, wonder what's going to happen when we're not pro anymore. What the hell? We're going to be just mangled because we don't, like, all we want to do is this. So, so that was kind of where I was. I mean, Instagram was killing me because I felt so much pressure to continually put out content at a level that I felt I needed to be at, even though I didn't need to be there. And it was, I wanted quality over quantity, and that's not the Instagram method.
Right.
And I did not, I had this thing in me where, I mean, maybe I learned it from Rodney, but I refused to dilute my skating to the point where it would be more, at the end of my career, I don't want to be known as some guy that just barfed out a bunch of footage on Instagram and like kind of tainted my the thing I worked 20 years to create of my legacy of skating, whatever the hell that is. But so I was like, what am I doing? my aha moment.
I'm getting so curious. I was gonna.
Like I was searching for everything. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, I'd heard the same things over and over again. And I was in, where was it? I was at my friend's house in London this New Year's. I remember sitting in London staring at the subway, and like I was just sitting on the bench. Like I was probably for like an hour underground. I paid, so I had to like pay to get out because I, stay longer. I was just watching the damn train go by and watching people move, like, and come in and out and do their thing every day. And I was just like, what the fuck are these people thinking about? Like, what are they doing? Like, what am I doing? I was just sitting there and I mean, I didn't really, I think Ben also said it. It wasn't like thoughts of like, suicidal thoughts or anything. It was the idea of being okay not waking up in the morning, that kind of vibe. I had those. Like, I was like, I'm driving down to LA or down up to Vancouver, and I mean, obviously I'm not going to turn off the road, but you're like, what happens if something happens? Like, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I remember sitting in a car with Jose Rojo. We were driving to the skate spot in San Francisco, and I remember I looked over. We were driving in the fast lane. I looked over, and there was this big rig carrying like some sort of heavy bricks or whatever. But the back wheel was doing this, and I was like, "Hey, Jose, look at that!" And it went fa fa fa, and the wheel flung off, and it went like 30 feet in the air, like, and I was watching it. And he was like, "Oh my God!" Like, and then there was a double wheel, so the other wheel shot across and hit off the fast lane and flung up too.
Oh my God!
And he was like, "Oh my God!" And it was. I remember being in that moment, and I just like, I didn't have any feeling. I was just like watching it, and it didn't spark any. And then I remembered how he acted, and I was like, oh, maybe there's an issue here with me. I mean, what, like, that life-threatening, and then it bounced next to us and like skimmed his car and it flew. But it was all right. Nothing really happened. And then anyway, back to my aha moment. It was, I don't even watch these dudes, but it was when Theo Vaughn and Tony Robbins had a podcast. They did a podcast together.
Yeah, funny, I just watched that clip yesterday.
Did you?
I've never seen him in my life.
I don't. Again,
Theo, but I've watched Tony Robbins.
Yeah, I don't watch either of them. I mean, I'll see Theo's on Instagram and whatever. I'm not like I don't follow him but it's the way that he said it at the moment that he said it that I watched it, and it was the idea of your how did he put it? Like, you have these negative emotions that you're so comfortable with that you're afraid of cheating on them, or what was the term he'd use?
I forgot, but that's such a weird serendipity. I literally watched it yesterday, and I never watch it.
That clip?
It was that 10 minute or so.
Yeah, it wasn't even 10 minutes. It was an Instagram clip that was like 3.
Oh, I saw it on YouTube.
Because there was a couple, because I started, when I saw that one, it was like,
He was so comfortable with that discomfort.
Yeah.
He didn't want to let it go. That's my words.
Yeah. So he said something about, like, I felt like I was cheating on this thing that I was so comfortable with, and that were so negative to me, but I was so comfortable, and there was a part of me that I didn't accept this new thing or whatever. I mean, you should watch it. It's good. And then there was other things in terms of, like, when Tony Robbins was like, okay, look around the room and look at all the brown things in here. Like, count how many brown things are. He's
interrupting his pattern.
Yeah, he's like.
Tony's really good at NLP. That's what he originally studied. And he knows some hypnotic language.
Yeah, so he's like, count how many brown things are in here, and then he's like, okay, whatever, and he's like, how many do you see? And he's like, I think he said some number, and he's like, okay, how many times did you think beige? How many did you include beige as a brown? And he's like, yeah, and he's like, okay, whatever. How many red things did you see? And he's like, none. I couldn't, because I wasn't paying. He's like, because you were paying attention to the things that were complementing how you're feeling in terms of negative. And
reinforcing the story.
Yeah. And so when I started, he went on with that about negative feelings. That's what you do with negative feelings, is that you find things that complement negative feelings in your body, that even the positive things, they're still there. But you don't see them because you're
in that feeling, so you're looking for.
Yeah.
Here's a beautiful. Again, I think this was from some of the 3 principles teachers, maybe Dr. George Pransky or Dickon Bettinger. I'm not sure, but they gave us this beautiful metaphor for the worse you feel emotionally, the more skeptical you should be about your thinking.
Right.
The better you feel, meaning clear. You don't have to be happy all the time, but the more clear you feel emotionally, the more you should trust your thinking.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah.
The feeling, you look for things that, and you believe the thoughts that match with that feeling. But so that was your aha moment.
Yeah, because then it was like he was talking about perspective, because nothing was different. Like everything was still the same.
Oh, I like it. Yeah.
So you were focused on stuff that was complementing whatever you're trying to find and whatever your thought pattern was, even though all the positive things in your life are still there. And if you, again, just the way that you think and perceive certain things that you deal with, and how you're, I don't know, how you're trained to deal with those things. If you shifting that slightly, coming back into the situation and seeing this stuff, you're like, I want to look at this now. It will change everything. And I watched that clip and I watched a few more after, and it literally, what you said, it just, everything I was feeling went away.
Whoa.
Like, you're lucky.
Gone. Well, I know, that's what I mean.
It was perspective shift. Like another beautiful quote is, I love this, it's, you're only ever one thought away from a completely different experience.
Absolutely.
Oof.
The impossible thing is, how do you do it?
Right.
You can't do it. You have to, you either get it or you don't get it.
Yeah. That's why I like sharing insights. For me, it came from watching and listening to other people share their insights, just like you are watching Theo and Tony.
Yeah.
And then something in you were like, ah. And the reason why I think that can be so powerful is because your guard is down. They're not trying to make you change. You're just you're more open.
Yeah, well, I was pretty down. There's been a year. It was like an entire year of just like, and then there was the flight thing where I was just, oh my God, because they have no counter. There's no desk counter. You have to call Calgary.
Whoa.
And then, so there's nobody in London to help you. So I was like, and then I bought 3 inches of blood tickets for $70 and I couldn't even go. So I was like,
so I'm curious, what's different now based on that experience?
Dude, whatever happened there, I can't even tell you how.
It doesn't matter how, but just what's different.
Oh, perspective. I like all the negative stuff, because the one thing that I was concentrated on was how do I get rid of all this? It's overwhelming. Is that me?
My God, Chris.
Spam.
Are we good with battery?
I think so.
In 8 minutes, we'll have been running for an hour and a half.
8 minutes. Let's check. That one's still good. That one's still good.
So perspective shift, and then what I'm curious is about what's different now. Not even so much about the perspective, but if you want, but just in life.
What's crazy is I felt like there was nothing, because I was searching for something, a purpose to do stuff with. You know, like I was like, okay, skating's not working, but all these other people are they're all doing all sorts of opportunities they're doing. You're like looking at that shit, and you're looking on Instagram, like these dudes are killing it. All these dudes are getting sponsored still. They're all, you know, like, dudes are 40 and they're still sponsored. Like, so everyone with Instagram, I used to like make it so it feel like everybody on there was one person. So like, this dude is killing it. Everybody on this app is absolutely destroying it. Honestly, why do I feel like I can't keep up? That kind of shit.
Right.
And then, that was the Instagram stuff. That went away. So I started, and then I started. I basically had a clean slate again, and then all of a sudden, when I don't know again why, but I started concentrating. Okay, what am I doing here? That's when an opportunity came up. Things started popping up. Rodney's thing started popping up with the game started being better. Like my being a part of Rodney's augmented reality game started. This stuff started. This is the stuff that I wanted to do, because I had a brand. It wasn't doing anything because I lacked the part that I wanted to have in it to make it any credible source of like help or direction or focus or anything that I want to do with mental wealth and mental wellness and mental health and stuff like that. So I didn't have that. So I just let it marinate to where it was nothing. It was just like coasting. And I had no idea who to contact or where I could get those resources from or whatever. And then, these weirdos showed up, and then it was like all of that stuff filled in the blank. And then I filled in the blank for something that they were trying to do.
Yeah, I like the integration.
It's cool.
It seems really cool.
But I don't know if those were going to come anyway, or if those happened because of something, or if those were just the way that I was thinking, or I changed my mindset so I was looking somewhere else instead of looking in the same direction. I don't know what it was, but that was that was the change I had. And then I felt better. Mm-hmm. Just like I started feeling more motivated in terms of like getting, like eating better, sleeping better. Mm-hmm. Focus on like doing my art better, my skating. I started realizing that, I don't need to be what I was in skating, and nobody can take what I did away from me. So why I'm like 44 years old. Why do I keep feeling like I need to be 20? Half these people I skate with are 20 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm not 20 anymore. Mm-hmm. I know the cycle of what you do, and I've had it. I've already done it. I want something new, and that's why when things like this started popping up, I was like, yes, let's like focus on this stuff, because it's like, it's not only helping me, but it's helping me utilize what I've created in my brand to help other people. You know what I mean?
Sweet. So I'm inspired.
Yeah. So that's my aha moment was Tony Robbins and Theo, for God's sake.
Who would have thought?
But I'd heard stuff. I'd heard it all the time through the whole year. I was searching for it. I was like I was hitting you up, being like, dude, you're on a different planet too. I need to find out where the hell you went, because I feel like I need to do that. And
this is even a better time now, because I'm even more clear about what I'm doing, and I know my purpose 100%. So
yeah. So now, like, I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm not switched around. Like that was the aha moment. So now I have to put it into play and stuff. Yeah. And from then until now, it's, I made amends with the girl that I was seeing, because I left kind of just, I had all these abandonment issues that I felt like I abandoned her, and I like had shame and guilt and all this stuff that was piling on top, that I went back to her, and I was like, listen, this is what happened. This is what's going on. And I felt okay leaving that net last time. And it's been like 3 months since that. So, I mean, skating, I skate every day. I don't mind skating every day like I do. I don't care about going street skating or filming the next video. It doesn't matter. That stuff, it's crazy because how heavy that was, that I felt it went away in 2 seconds.
The obligation to try.
The obligation of like trying to feel like I need to sort everything out. That was my problem. And that was the biggest weight that was on me, is like, how do I can't deal with all this stuff at once. Like, and it's going to take me years to do it. Drowning in your own problems. And if you're fortunate to have that moment, none of it matters. It's because you're not thinking about it. If you don't think about it, it's not a problem.
Yeah. There's something you said I wanted to ask you about, but I want to ask Jazz, because you had this pretty profound reaction when Chris was talking.
Mm-hmm. What are you asking?
Yeah, just
why? So many layers to that, because it's vulnerability. It's men being able to talk about that side, that not understanding, where you're at. And I think that I've dated a lot of men, and it's just so nice to hear a grown man be so in tune and be able to be vulnerable. And like, look at this guy. Look at what we're looking at. We're dealing with a pro skater
a caveman.
But like from the outside, like the judgment and the understanding of who you might be, like to know that that's under there, I'm just cry thinking about it. So it just hit a chord. And then just being able to be that open and that transparent and knowing who we're trying to reach here, just like, wow, if it hits like a 15-year-old boy that would have screwed over some girl's life, I'm just thinking of like future state of what we can do, what we are doing, and just what a beautiful person I get to sit across from. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I agree. Yeah, I've always felt really comfortable around Chris. Like, not judged in any way.
Yeah.
It's and also open too. Very open, like not kind of stuck in, like willing to explore deeper feelings, experiences, perspectives. Yeah, it's quite
And that
unique.
That 15-year-old boy.
Oh, fuck that boy. Yeah, what's that?
What about that boy?
That boy totally changed my perspective of myself. And I think that was kind of his own thing that he was dealing with, and not knowing what's his purpose, and kind of externalizing a lot of his own feelings about where he was at. And I think we all do that as kids, and God, that's why we shouldn't be dating at that age, but you live and you learn. And just also hearing you talk and be so transparent and honest, I think that was also resonating with me. I think the reason I couldn't get out of a lot of the situations I was in was because I was like, what is my purpose? I'm a fixer. My whole job is to fix this boy, this man, this person I'm with. I mean, that's probably why I'm drawn to nursing and this kind of work, is what is my purpose in life, and kind of being able to extract myself from it and be like, wow, there's so much more to me as a woman, as a human being. I just resonated so much with that. So.
Yeah, there's a level of taking on other people's sadness and stuff like that just I couldn't. I started realizing that too, and me and people pleasing and stuff like this, and it was way too much. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I have to do some serious self work.
That's what I've done now the last 10, 15 years.
Well, that's what I mean. Dude, you would post these, you'd go on walks around, were you in Euclid or where were you doing those, you do walk around, you're like, here's my daily thought for today on Instagram. I was
doing that in Vancouver too.
Were you?
And sometimes when I was out on the island, but posting little insights and thoughts.
Yeah, so I remember you first started doing it, I was weird, and I was like, oh, that's just Gord. He's being a silly Gord. Didn't put any thought into it, just think that you were doing your thing, whatever. And then after, when I revisited those things, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, a lot of those were from some of what I shared.
Yeah, I get it.
It's that aha moment I had years ago in the anxiety depression support group, just kind of Well,
I was I wasn't ready to, and then when I had had the moment or whatever, I came back and it was willing to understand and actually take in just stuff that you were saying. That's why I was because you're the only one that was outspoken about what you were doing and that stuff. So you're the only one that I knew of.
Wow.
That I would be like, okay, he's not going to judge me for anything that I did. No,
that's another thing earlier when I was talking about this mindfulness perspective, and also even the hypnotic perspective of that people just go into trance states, anger trances, anxiety trances. So I actually started having a lot more compassion for people, not because I worked on compassion. I did a little bit, but it was just because I saw that, oh wow, that's not their fault. It's just they're in a trance, a negative trance, and it takes the fear out of it. That's a big thing. Again, I shared that before. If I'm going through depressive thinking or anxious thinking, if I can reduce the fear of that, it kind of takes care of itself, or it settles, like the snow globe metaphor that I was going to share. It's like shaking it up. More thought. How do I fix this? How do you clear the snow globe? You got to shake it further, harder and harder. You don't. Just let it sit.
Yeah.
Becomes clear.
A lot of what I was when I was, when you're going through, a lot of it is I understood that the words that you use, just in terms of when you're talking back to someone, the words that you're using it have way more impact on the specific word, because sometimes people are like, oh, we can't do anything. You have to, get out of this depressive state yourself because we can't do it.
Yeah.
Just the way the words that people choose to use to talk to you.
Framing it
is huge.
Huge.
And do you think what is it? The people that don't know how to deal with the situation, but they're trying to console you or whatever, it turns into I can't remember which are it wasn't fear. What was it? What were you just talking about? Oh, fuck, I lost
The
it.
fear.
No, it's like, I lost it. Fuck it. I lost it.
I love it.
What helped me is listening to people.
Was it frustration?
Frustration.
What were you talking about just now? It was like, fucking.
But yeah, sometimes it's just a skillful, mindful person that knows how to give you some of the words to help you reframe and move on. Like there's so many. An example is once I went to a therapist who's really good at the technique she used, and she was able to help me de-stress for specific memory or an emotion, and that she was really good at. But I remember right at the end of the session, the last 5 minutes, I brought up another little light kind of issue, and then she started actually anxietizing over it and worrying and feeding to me.
Oh, no.
You got to take care of that because that could lead to that, to that.
Oh,
to that.
here we
And I
go.
was like, I'm driving away. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was
You're, like, inspired.
why do I feel worse? So that's why after like a session, I at the end of the session, I'll add some words that kind of lead the person. And a beautiful piece that I can do that has helped me as well. I do it in self-hypnosis, but like imagine a week from now, you're feeling a little more calm and confident, or maybe a month from now, feeling a little more calm and confident, or maybe 3 months from now, feeling a little more calm and confident. And what is it that you most like about yourself? Is it the way you look? Is it the way you move? Is it how you feel? And then I get them to imagine floating up, forward, down into that perspective, see what you see through calm, confident eyes, hear what you hear through calm, confident ears, feel how it is to move with calm and confidence. And what you're doing is you're getting all the submodalities, the visual, the auditory, kinesthetic, and then what you want to do is you want to bring this back to where they're at. And I learned this from hypnotist, specific language from hypnotist Ali Campbell, and he says, what is it that you most like about this? Is it the way you move? Is it the way you feel? Is it how you're acting or behaving more confidently in your life? Or is it how you feel now listening to my voice here in this session? That brings a person right back to now. What you're doing is, that's called future pacing, and that's using language to create positive expectation. Whereas certain therapists I went to, they were doing the opposite of that. I'd clear an issue, but then they would add more worries. It's like, I want to work with someone who can actually get it into my nervous system and I can feel a positive expectation. So words, I don't know, words, I love words. Words.
And they matter. They matter.
Anyhow. And yeah. Cool.
Caveman.
Oh, yeah. Chris wants me to share this caveman therapy.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. It's a story years ago, I think 2010. I was working part-time at the boardroom clearance snowboard shop. A buddy of mine was managing it, and I was working there, and I had these great conversations with a guy who worked there, and he was into mindfulness and meditation. We would just chat mindfulness and personal development, and one day he was going on and on about some anxiety and stress that he felt around certain people in his life. And so I just sat there or stood there. We were sitting in the store, and he was talking for about 5-10 minutes about what he didn't like and how he didn't like how he felt, and these people were this way and that way. And then when he came to a pause, I said, could you sum up that entire thing that you just told me, but you're only allowed to use 2 words? And then he kind of paused for a moment, and he kind of had this little smile on his face, and he said, people, stupid. He burst out into laughter, and I said, there you go. That's some caveman therapy. Like, take away the overthinking.
It
and you
literally
just
is that simple.
simplify it.
That's funny.
Thanks for reminding me. Caveman therapy.
Did you have further questions that you wanted to get to?
Well, I mean, we've been talking for a while, but just going back to that 15-year-old, because I feel like what we've discussed, we're able to discuss because we're older and we've kind of come to these realizations, and now we appreciate that, okay, it's okay to talk about these things, and it's okay to have moments of depression, anxiety, but like, what about that 15-year-old who's like, and they're feeling these emotions? What would you tell them?
I've thought about this before, specifically in dialogue with someone about how some men just hold all their emotions in and they don't want to speak their emotions. There's actually a friend of mine from Germany. We were catching up, and she was saying that was a pet peeve for her, and I just kind of gave her a perspective, hoping to de-stress her with the way he is. And I said, well, the reason why, and this is true for me, I didn't talk about my emotions or what was really going on, is because I was afraid. I think this might be true for a lot of people, is that if I started talking about them, it would get worse and it would get out of hand and I wouldn't be able to handle it. I dated a woman once who did the silent treatment, and it drove me crazy. But then it was explained to me by a good therapist that said, well, that's a mechanism inside her mind that just knows that she can't speak because she'll blow up. It's a calming mechanism. So if someone is afraid of emotion, of course they're going to hold it in. So the key point for me that I like to share with people is what helped me shift that is having more of a holistic understanding of me that I'm not my emotion. If a guy is expressing depression and thinks that's who he is, and it's painful, of course he's going to try and hold it in. But so the big shift for me was your emotion isn't who you are, just a part of who you are. And a good mindfulness piece would be you're the thinker of the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings. You're not any one state that comes up. That's not who you are. That made me be able to share my emotions with others. Yeah.
I like that. I think my message is always like, it's okay to be feeling what you're feeling, and chances are this other people are feeling it too. If
you can sit across from someone and you're in that emotion that bubbles up, and they know that it's okay for you to feel that, it's very relaxing.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like if you're not afraid of my emotion, I believe there's a part of me that picks up on that. Maybe the mirror neurons, I'm like, oh, I'm scared and emotional, but this guy sitting across from me seems calm and he's holding space. I was like, oh, maybe I can express it and just be present again.
That's right.
Yeah. So I've had those kind of experiences with one-on-ones where they just kind of held space. I love that phrase.
I know, me too. And that, like, giving that, like, 5% or 10% to someone else totally makes the other person feel great.
Yeah.
Right? To be like, wow, I can lighten this load by just sharing it with you.
Yeah.
And things get better. I mean, like, because sometimes, particularly for young people, like, if they're in that anxiety or depressive state, it's like, it's doom. It's never going to get better. But things do get better, and there's places where people can go to get help. Right?
Yeah. And find the people that you resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, how do they find you?
GordFaulkner.com. Yeah. GordFaulkner.com.
I'm going to be referring.
Yeah, that's going to be our new plug.
That's right. I mean, it's so cool. Yeah. And then, so YouTube channel, video course, giving a course or taking a course?
Creating a course, like an online video course, just to teach people some of the basics of what I share. I'm really drawn to the area of relationships and helping people relate more authentically and from a place of greater well-being. So there'll probably be one on that. And then really I'm a nerd about language and skills, so that's why when I take my courses, whether it's the coaching, when I did my coaching or the hypnosis, I love questions and language and a bit of the linguistics of like, oh, that's why they say it the way they do. So I'd love to create a little mini course for other coaches, therapists, and people doing this kind of work to help them just be a bit more artful and skilled with language. Because it's the part that I nerd out the most about, and it's the part.
Well, it's almost the most important part. How you
deliver, and then with heart too. Yep. I mean, part of it is the word, but a part of it, say in hypnosis, is the rhythm and the pace. I'm often speaking in rhythm to someone's out breath, because that signals to their unconscious mind that I have a rapport with them, and that's usually very relaxing. A lot of hypnotherapists don't even do that. People who do guided meditation, they're not actually paying attention to the person's breathing. I just did there. And it's very relaxing because they feel, that's an unconscious process. And if you're hearing someone's voice, speaking to your breath,
That I mindful.
it's like they feel safe. And when I learned that one years ago. I was doing some guided meditation for a roommate, and I did that. It's like she went like 10 times deeper, and she's like, just so relaxed, so comfortable. So there's an art on top of the words as well.
That's cool. I had not thought of that.
Yeah, most people don't know it.
Yeah.
Even therapists don't. Some hypnotherapists don't know that. So
Cool. Any thoughts? This has been like really cool. Yeah.
so
I
I
don't know what to
appreciate
expect.
your questions, your curiosity, and your sharing, awesome. Like,
Question about